In addition to the active contributing membership in EORP, there will also be an alternate contribution rate that the employer must pay for any elected official who has retired out of our plan and has been subsequently reemployed in what would traditionally be an active contributing elected official position. So if you as an employer are reemploying a retired elected official into an elected official plan that would traditionally be filled by someone who would be actively contributing, you as the employer must pay that alternate contribution rate. And that rate coming up for this upcoming fiscal year is
14.47.
14.47% of payroll. Moving on to the next, no, please go back. Thank you, sorry. Moving on to the next section, dealing with service purchases and refunds. For an individual to make or put in an application for any type of service purchase or buyback, there will be some stipulated changes starting on the effective date of July 20th of 2011. And what that will be is that a member must have 10 years of credited service on the books before they're even eligible to put in an application for any type of buyback that they may have qualified time for. In addition to that, there are maximums, a maximum amount of time that an individual can purchase. It is going to be no more than 60 months for prior military service and no more than 60 months for prior public service. So that will be the maximum amount of time that an individual and elected official retirement plan will be eligible to buy if they do have that qualified time available for purchase. Again, it's also important to note that an individual has to show 10 years of credited service before that application process can even begin. For our existing members, when it comes to refunds, excuse me, there will be no changes to our existing membership as long as they were hired or are members in the plan on or before January 1st of 2012. So for when it comes to refunds, if there's any refund applications, they will still be under the current provisions in elected officials' retirement plan. When it comes to their benefit calculations, our current membership who are contributing, there are no changes to the benefit calculation provisions that are within elected official retirement plan, which does also include early retirement. So for our existing membership, there is no change on how that is conducted. We would still conduct the high 3 calculation, and then based upon their years of service, their benefit is calculated accordingly, and normal retirement does not change for them. So as you can see here on the slide, normal retirement under elected official is 65 with 5 or more years of credited service, age 62 with 10 or more years of credited service, or 20 years of credited service regardless of their age. You'll note at the bottom of this slide that there's also been a change with respect to membership who's considered a member and elected official. Our Superior Court commissioners who are appointed on or after July 1st of the fiscal year following the Social Security Administration's approval to include that group in the state's 218 agreement will no longer be members in the elected officials' retirement plan. They will then become members to ASRS. So once the Social Security Administration approves their coverage under the 218 agreement, on July 1st of that fiscal year following that, no longer will there be Superior Court commissioners contributing to elected officials. Okay, this next slide deals with what happens to those new hires that are hired on or after January 1st of 2012. And that January 1st, 2012 new membership issue is going to be the issue with all 3 of our plans. So the changes that are associated with the second tier of benefits is going to be for all 3 of our plans for any new hire that's hired on or after January 1st of 2012. So what happens to those individuals? Well, for their contribution rates are exactly the same as it is for our existing membership. So they also will see an incremental change each fiscal year based upon the fiscal year in question. So starting this upcoming fiscal year, they will also be required to contribute 10%. Fiscal year after that, 11.5%, so on and so on. They also will be subject to the ACR requirements, or the employer would be subject to the ACR requirements for those new hires that are hired on or after January 1st, 2012, and if they retire and are reemployed in an EORF position, then they also would fall under that ACR, or alternative contribution rate. The service purchase requirements for them are also the same as it will be for our active membership come July 20th of 2011. In that, again, they must show 10 years of credited service before they can even put in an application for a service purchase request. And then in addition to that, they do have their time frames of no more than 60 months for active military service and no more than 60 months for prior public service. One thing that does change for them with respect to refunds is that if you have a member who was hired on or after January 1st of 2012 and terminates and puts in a request for a refund, all that they will receive is the contributions which they put into the system plus any interest that is determined by the Board of Trustees. And that would be all. Our existing membership would traditionally receive an enhanced refund based upon their years of service. But under this plan, for our new hires after January 1st of 2012, they will strictly get their contributions into the system plus any interest that is determined by the Board of Trustees. The biggest change for our new hires after January 1st of 2012 is their benefit calculations and their eligibility for retirement. Normal retirement will now be an individual who is age 65 with 5 or more years of credited service, or an individual who is age 62 with 10 or more years of credited service. There is no longer the 20 years issue with no age requirement. In addition to that, there is also no early retirement provisions for those new hires hired after January 1st of 2012. Their pension calculation will also change with respect to their average, how their average compensation is determined. Their highest average is determined on the highest 5 consecutive years of compensation within their last 10 years of service. So it's not like our current membership, which has the high 3. Theirs will be the high 5. Their pension amount that they will receive is 3% of their average salary multiplied by their actual years of credited service. So when they retire, we determine, the calculations are actually done here in our office because we are considered the local board here. But we would calculate it based upon a 3% for every credited year that's shown for them at application. Maximum benefit for them would be 75% of their average monthly compensation. In addition to that, the survivor benefits associated with elected officials are also changing for those new hires hired on or after January 1st of 2012. An eligible surviving spouse will receive 50% of the member's pension at the time of death. Or the member at the time of their retirement, they can make an election to have a higher survivor pension benefit, but would reduce an actuarial reduction to their actual calculated pension benefit. So when a member comes to our office under these new provisions, when they elect their retirement pension, they will have the option to select a higher survivor pension, but with respect to that, they will receive a reduction to their actual calculated benefit based upon whatever rate they want to have their survivor receive. When it comes to a disability under the elected official plan, if there is a member who's hired on or after January 1st, 2012, and they are eligible to receive a disability pension, their pension will be calculated as follows. For a member who has 10 or more years of credited service, they will receive 75% of their average salary, again calculated on the high 5. If the member has between 5 to 9 years of credited service at time that they are approved for a disability pension, their pension amount will be 37.5% of their average salary. And then for a member who has 5 years or less of credited service into the plan, their pension will be 18.75% of their average salary. And again, this section right here deals exclusively for those members who are hired on or after January 1st of 2012. Go ahead and go to the next slide. This next slide, again, still dealing with elected official retirement plan, deals with the permanent benefit increases, or what's commonly known as those COLAs. Effective May 31st of this year, we are no longer putting any excess investment earnings into the current COLA reserves that are on the books. So how we currently conduct pension benefit increases, we are no longer going to be receiving any more inflows of funds into that account that's used to fund those permanent benefit increases. So what is, as of now, is what is going to be used to fund benefit increases in the elected officials plan for those retirees who are eligible currently right now under the benefit increase program. Once those funds have been exhausted, then starting with July 1st of 2012, the new program on how benefit increases are given will now come into play. And as you can see here, there's a couple hurdles on how that benefit increase is going to be determined for those eligible retirees and survivors. The first hurdle that must be met is that the fund must earn more than 10.5% in the prior fiscal year. So in order for us to even consider a future benefit increase for these members, in the prior fiscal year, the fund must have a 10.5% return for us to even potentially consider a future benefit increase. In addition to that, based upon the funding status of the entire fund, the percentage that increase that will be given to those individuals will be determined as follows. If the elected officials' retirement funding ratio is between 60 to 64%, the benefit increase that will be given to those eligible retirees will be 2% increase of the benefit that was received on the preceding June 30th of that year. If the funding ratio for the plan is between 65 to 69%, it is going to be a 2.5% increase to the benefit that is being received by the survivor or retiree in the preceding June 30th. If that funding ratio is between 70 to 74%, it's 3%. If the funding ratio is between 75 to 79%, then it increases to 3.5%. And then finally, for an elected official, if our elected official funding ratio is 80% or more, then the increase will be 4% increase to the benefit being received on the preceding June 30th to those eligible retirees and survivors. It is important to note, though, that if the earnings over 10% are insufficient to fully fund those percentages indicated above, then all that we would pay out would be the maximum allowable once we conduct our actuarials to determine how much it's going to cost to pay these benefit increases. So we have to have 10.5% return in the prior fiscal year. Based upon funding ratio, we determine what the percentage increase will be, or would be, potentially be, and then on top of that, we have to figure out how much is actually available in funds over the 10.5% to fund those increases. If we don't have enough in the fund over the 10.5% to fully fund, say for instance, the 3% increase, we would only pay out a benefit that the funds available can pay out, in essence.